Welcome to Bicheno Penguin Tours, and thank you very much for coming on this lovely Tasmanian winter's evening. In a moment we'll be heading down, obviously, but before we do, I do have a few things that I need to go through with you just to make sure that the penguins are safe and for their welfare, but also for yours. The first thing that I'd like to say is, please remember and respect the fact that these penguins are wild, okay? They are not domesticated, they're not tame, they're not our pets. Unlike, for example, Phillip Island in Victoria, we don't tag our penguins here, we don't microchip them. So, in other words, these penguins are never touched, except in extreme circumstances when they are very ill or dying or whatever. So we never touch them, so they're not used to being touched. Please do not try to touch them. If you do, you are likely to find yourself on the receiving end of a pretty nasty little bite, okay? And their beaks are very sharp. The inside of their beaks are actually serrated, which I will explain a bit more about later. And if they really get fed up with you, if you perhaps try to reach down and pick one up and put it in your pocket to take home or something like that, they might take a few steps away from you, turn around, and then aim a very powerful but very precise poo right at your feet or your shins. Okay, that's one of their defense mechanisms, a bit like a skunk. Okay, it doesn't smell quite as bad as a skunk, but it doesn't smell great because they only eat fish. Okay, now there are a few things that we can do to help penguins behave the way we want them to behave, which is to get nice and close to us so that we can see them and that we can really experience what they're doing. We need to make them feel happy, unthreatened and natural. Best way to do that is to stand nice and still, or indeed sit nice and still when we are close to them or when they are coming close to us. And when we're standing or indeed sitting, it's a good idea just to spread your feet by maybe half a metre or a little bit more. The reason for that is, if I get down to the height of a penguin, down here somewhere, and I look here, all I see in front of me basically could be an impenetrable forest or a cliff or something like that, okay? So I'm just going to turn around and find another way home. We want them to go their usual way, and I'll remind you when we're down there. And the best way to do that is to stand like this, because then they can see their way through, and you might even score a penguin goal, which is when the penguin goes between your feet, okay, or over your shoes or whatever. So that's a brilliant experience. So as I say, we can help them. The second thing is noise, okay? They don't mind just low-level noise like my voice or other people's voices, but they don't like high-pitched noises or sudden noises. So when you first see them, okay, I'm looking at the adults here. When you first see them, rather than going, whoo, much better just to go, yeah, nice. Okay, keeping it nice and mellow is fine. Okay, so yeah, keeping nice and still, nice and quiet. They don't like this noise either. Okay, so just make sure that you pick up your feet as we're walking along, because they confuse that or they interpret that as a threat, a predator coming towards them, something like that. Okay. All right, final thing, sorry this is going on, but the final thing is photography. You are more than welcome to take photographs, but please make sure every time you go to take a photo, the flash is off, okay? If you're using a phone, which most people do nowadays, if you're using a phone, please make sure that the flash is off every time, because if you go to another app like movies or messaging or whatever, and then back to camera, you can find that the flash comes on automatically. So please just make sure. The flash of white light can really harm the penguins temporarily, maybe even more long term. Okay, so please be careful with that. Okay, my name is Joseph, and I welcome your questions this evening. It makes your evening more interesting and more beneficial, I hope. It makes my evening a little bit more interesting too. So please do ask questions as we're going around. And just pipe up, say, hey Joseph, when can I go home, or whatever it might be. Okay, so yeah, please do ask questions as we're going around. Are there any questions before we head down?
Is it safe for kids?
Is it safe
for
kids?
kids to go near to the penguins, or they come near to kids?
I will say how close. That's a really good point. We wait for them to come to us. Okay. Please don't approach the penguins because they will interpret that as a predator coming towards them. Yeah. Good point. Thank you. Yeah. Are you getting your foot scraping out of the way before we go down to the penguins? Okay, let's go. Very, very early. We're not totally sure. There are one or two theories about why the season has started so early for some of the penguins. We're not totally sure why it is, but nevertheless, it has. So these are a couple of chicks. They're about 3 weeks old, so you can tell how quickly they grow, because shortly when we go into the shed you'll see an egg. You'll see the size of egg that they come out of. So these are two chicks about 3 weeks old, and you'll notice that they are wearing a very downy sort of coat. Okay. So once you've had a look, and their parents teach them nothing at all. Quite unusual in the animal kingdom that to have parents that don't teach their young anything. So they have to learn to swim, they have to learn to hunt and feed themselves, and crucially they have to learn to clean their feathers. And like a lot of adults, some of them can't be bothered to do it properly. And that is why quite a lot of them die in the first 3 years. They reach sexual maturity when there are 3, and that's when they'll come back here to the same colony where they were born to breed. On the island, just here, yeah, as I said earlier, about 500 along this coast. In this colony, this rookery has about 320 adults. So because the young adults have to learn everything, obviously they really struggle sometimes to survive. And before the age of 3, when they reach sexual maturity and they will breed for the first time, around about 75 to 80% of the young adults will die. They use that to help navigate, because they can pick up pressure differences as water deflects off rocks and islands and reefs and things like that. Mm-hmm.
Sit down, don't move. Just sit.
Coming up now.
No.
Sorry? Do they sleep? Yeah. I've just been asked about sleeping. Do they sleep in the nests? They rest. As you can see, they've got the adult colours with their downy feathers, but obviously they don't yet have their adult feathers. So again, they're just waiting for their parents to come home to feed them.